The 15-Point Plan is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network.
Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by Jolene Snell. Jolene, how are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, so good to be here with all of you.
Excellent. Jolene, I want to talk about something that I think is a topic that's going to mess a lot of people up, but help a lot of people at the same time, and that's recovery.
Okay,
we've been talking about movement. We're going through movement. We need to talk about recovery because it's part of movement. So when I say recovery, what does that mean to you, Jolene?
taking a nap.
Okay, awesome.
No, recovery means typically for me, it's been, hey, when I feel that exhaustion or I feel that twinge or that small injury or an injury, that I'm taking time to let it heal.
Okay.
Because sometimes your body needs extra rest depending on the activity that was done. But I also don't know if we have all of the right tools and knowledge of how to do it appropriately. Like, is there too much rest, right?
Okay.
Is there not enough? So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what that would look like.
All right. So there's different kinds of recovery. There's recovery short, and then there's recovery long-term. Okay. So short-term recovery, you've heard you shouldn't work out 7 days a week, correct?
No?
You haven't heard that? Okay. Most trainers will tell you not to work out 7 days a week.
Okay.
Now, they'll give you that seventh day and say you can go for a hike, you can go for a walk, but not a workout.
Well, a hike is a workout.
To some people, right?
But yes, let's define that, right?
Right.
What a workout is.
A workout, I'm talking, you're lifting weights or you're going really intense, stuff like this. You're going to see the football players, basketball player, true athletes that are out there. I'm not saying hiking's not a sport, I guess. There's probably somebody who...
It'll be in the Olympics someday.
Yeah, one day it'll be there, right? But I'm talking those training, the people that were out there. One of the things that made Michael Phelps better than everybody else is his coach said to him, most swimmers swim 6 days a week. We are not going to do that. We're going to build your program to swim 7 days a week. And by swimming every single day, you're going to swim 52 days more than everybody else over the course of a year. And because of that, we're going to turn you, okay, he's an extreme example.
Mm-hmm.
Most people out there should not work out hard 7 days a week. One day should be a recovery day, as we're talking about.
Okay.
Let your body rest a little bit. There's also recovery after an immediate workout. So, Jolene, what's the single most important thing we should do after we finish a workout, in your opinion?
Is simply just rest.
Okay. So just sit down and rest?
No. There's active recovery, right?
Sure.
It's dynamic recovery. And then there's actual, the release of the muscles, like with stretching.
There you go.
Yes.
There's the word I was waiting
Thanks for
you
leading me there, Chad.
to spit out for me, right? Stretching. And we did a whole deep dive into stretching, right? Hydration. You should not finish a workout and not go take some hydration to yourself. How many people don't eat after a workout?
Mm-hmm.
That's horrible for you to go more than an hour after a workout and not put fuel back into the engine.
And the reality of it is you want to do hydration,
Yes.
stretching,
Yes.
and fuel within a certain period of time after your workout.
Correct.
And I would say within at least an hour. But stretching you want to do while your muscles are still warm.
Stretching while warm, hydration as soon as possible. And yes, you should be fueling within an hour, preferably protein. Okay, in that situation, folks, preferably protein, because protein is what's going to help
Not
heal
Ben and Jerry's ice cream?
No, that's not protein.
All right, Chad.
No, that's the protein shake that I take. Have you ever heard the term DOMS, Jolene, in the world of health and exercise?
I have. Tell me more.
Okay, DOMS stands for delayed onset muscle soreness.
I think I have that today from my run.
This is what everybody had in the 80s,
Okay.
because that's where the term no pain, no gain came from. See, they're not saying, can you hurt yourself? What they're talking about is that delayed onset muscle soreness that's going to show up tomorrow from something you did today. Have you ever gone and lifted and then the next day you're like, oh my gosh, I can't straighten my arms? Or have you ever gone on a run and the next day you're like, I can't even climb up the stairs?
Yes, and it's usually, for me, it's 2 days after. I know some people, it's the day after. I'm like the 2-day person where I have a hard time getting up off of a chair.
There you go, right? It's delayed onset muscle soreness. Now, stretching will assist with removing DOMS, right? If you can stretch right after a workout, you're less likely to have the pain the next day or 2 days later for you. If you think about the days you've hurt, they're the days you skip the stretching, probably.
And maybe not just that day, but the regular act of stretching, as you'll hear in that episode.
Absolutely, keeping it up. But folks, no pain, no gain doesn't mean hurt yourself. It just means be aware for it. And we need the recovery to help us prevent something like DOMS hitting us on a regular basis. That's where the term came from. Now, Jolene, we also talk recovery more long-term, like an injury happens. And there was an acronym that came out back in 1978. That's how long it's been around. Longer than Jolene itself, this acronym.
Thanks for pointing that out.
No worries, right? It was mentioned by Dr. Gabe Merkin in the sports medicine book. And this acronym has stuck ever since, and it's r.i.c.e.r.
I feel like it's the acronym that will never die.
Correct, but we need to kill it. And today on the 15-point plan, we're going to bust another health myth, and we're going to get rid of r.i.c.e.r. because r.i.c.e.r. is not the answer when an injury happens and recovery is needed.
Well, okay. So let's go through what r.i.c.e.r. is to the majority of the population.
Okay. R stands for, Jolene?
So it's rest.
Very good. I.
Ice.
C.
Compress.
And E.
Elevate. So
Okay.
r.i.c.e.r., ice, compress, elevate.
Rest, ice, compress, elevate. I'll take you a little deeper on each one, right? Rest, because pain is telling your body something is wrong. Okay? So as soon as you're hurt, stop, possibly for 2 or 3 days, and don't push through that no pain, no gain philosophy. Okay? That's what they're talking about rest. Rest is wrong. Okay? A serious injury, yes, I'm not talking about a serious injury. But if you have lightly sprained an ankle, if you have your biceps are hurting because you lifted too heavy that day, the more rest, the stiffer they're going to get. You've got to get up and move around. Now, Jolene, I don't know if your dad said this, but almost every boy listening to this podcast, at some point, his dad said to him when he got hurt, just roll around in the dirt, you'll be fine. I know Dave has said it to his boys. He's nodding his head for me over there, right? When they've gotten hurt, he said, just roll around, get some dirt on that, and you'll be just fine. Okay? Sitting still is not the answer.
Well, and I think we've all been there. We feel more sore because we sat down and we binge watched a show on Netflix after we did a big exercise because we feel like we earned it. And then the next day we feel these consequences or the day after or even the day after. So that's the first myth that we're busting is this rest.
Yes.
Now, I want to point out if your body is sleeping a little bit longer than you normally sleep, just let it. And I'm not saying hours longer. I'm saying give it the few extra minutes because your body is healing when you're sleeping.
Yes.
What we're saying here is don't be lethargic on the couch. You want to keep moving, whether that's a slow walk and whatever else, Chad, right? You've got some great examples for us.
And this is for an injury. If it's severe, you should be in a hospital. But you can be sure even them, they're not going to tell you to rest anymore. How often do they send you out of the hospital now and they say, okay, we want you up on the crutches moving around right away?
And it's amazing with hip replacements nowadays, how true that is. They're actually walking as they leave the hospital.
So I'm going to tell you, Jolene, it's not me telling you this. I'm going to go back to Dr. Gabe Merkin, the guy who gave us the acronym r.i.c.e.r. In 1978, he told us r.i.c.e.r, rest, ice, compress, and elevate. And now he has gone back and said, I was wrong.
I don't think that the general population knows that.
They
so
don't.
Thank you for the enlightenment of this.
We are busting myths. Like the 10K steps is a complete myth. It was a marketing thing for all of you out there going, I'm going to get my 10,000 steps while listening to the podcast. Stop. You're not doing anything for yourself. Sure, you're moving. That's great. But it was a marketing thing we talked about.
Well, and just know, too, that everything evolves over the years. Like, as research becomes better and stronger, and like the way that we treated, autistic children and ADHD children 20 years ago is not the way that we treat it now. And so it's the same with some of these concepts like
So
rice.
what Dr. Gabe Merkin has said is that you will delay healing instead of helping healing with rest. Mild movement will help tissues heal faster. So move.
Point taken, Chad.
All
Okay,
right.
let's move on to ice because I know this one really gets you.
Okay, ice, it's obvious, right? We know what ice means.
Yeah, and usually it's like grabbing a cold pack from the freezer and you slap
Bag
it
of
on
peas,
and
right?
anything.
Something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I usually do the ice cream, so I'm not tempted to eat it.
There you go. Use the ice cream. Okay, so ice reduces pain and swelling. That's what ice does. Now, if it's a true injury and there's blood everywhere and we got to get to put some ice on it, it'll slow the pain, it'll slow the swelling, and it'll slow the blood flow.
So what does swelling actually do for our bodies?
Swelling actually helps the healing occur, okay? Swelling is going to be a positive that we want because blood is going to flow faster through the areas. When we put ice on it, we're delaying the swelling from happening, and we are delaying the blood from flowing.
Let me break this down. Ice equals less blood flow.
Yes.
Heat equals more blood flow.
Yes.
Blood flow creates healing. So are we busting a myth right here?
Another one. And I'm going back to Dr. Gabe Merkin himself,
Okay.
who said ice will delay healing. Cooling delays swelling, does not do anything for healing in any way. He has said that the application of cold will slow everything. It will suppress pain, but athletes usually want to return to action, not to just eliminate the pain. And the blood flow that comes from heat is the thing that's going to bring healing because you have fresh, healthy blood cells fixing the injury.
I'm so excited you're sharing this today. This is so necessary. And here's the thing. You can still use an ice pack for your forehead, right?
Sure.
You want to cool down. You want to feel refreshed. Go ahead and put it on the forehead,
Got a little bit of a
right?
headache? Sure. Put some ice on there if that's what you want to
Back of
dull
your
that.
neck.
Sure. Go crazy. You hurt your ankle. You hurt your back. You hurt your whatever. Stop sitting on the ice pack. Get a heating pad on you. You want to encourage blood flow and swelling because when you take the ice pack away, guess what? The pain's coming back.
I'm going to admit that I started doing this based on Chad's advice months ago, and I can see it working.
It works.
So I have been your test subject, and it's working really well. So I
All
just
right.
wanted to point that out. But the next one is not so obvious, and that's with compression.
Compression is compression, and compression is going to work, right? Dr. Merkin will tell you, he's still right on compression and elevation, okay? Compression will work because what you want to do is you want to that's wrapping it in a bandage, right? That's taking that ACE bandage and you wrap it around really, really tight to hold things together. And that's just you're giving the support. Same reason we put a splint on something when it's broken. We're giving it the support to then let the body heal it properly.
So give us a few cues of like what body parts we would do that for, right? Like
You twist an
what
ankle,
injuries.
Go wrap, that's where you get confusing, right? And you figure eight around your foot and your lower leg to hold the ankle together so it's in the right direction, right? That's the number one place. Your arm, the sling, the concept of people wearing a sling, that's compression, holding that arm in place so the shoulder sits where it needs to. Now, you don't want to rest it all day in that area. You want to move it if that's the injury that you're dealing with, okay? If you've wrapped a bandage, you want it to be snug. Think about the baby when you put the baby, what do they call that? Where we wrap the baby. Swaddling, right? They look like a
should know
burrito,
that.
right? So when you wrap a baby like that, that's what you're thinking. You want it to be tight, but you don't want it to interrupt the blood flow. You don't want it to be too tight in that situation because the skin should not turn blue, should not lose feeling, okay? The bandage should just be holding things together so the blood can flow and the wounds can be healed.
Okay.
Okay. And then the fourth one is elevate. Okay. Elevating will take some of the weight off. Now, elevating is almost too close to resting. Elevating is good, but you're going to then also limit the blood flow, and you're also going to have to then be resting because you're laying there.
Right.
So
It's tough to stay moving when you've got your feet up.
Correct.
Okay.
But elevating can be something to do at times to allow the body to relax. It will numb some of that pain that comes from elevating. It will give you some of that rest.
You know what it helps me with is I don't have this problem yet, and maybe it's because I do this, but varicose veins runs in my family.
Okay.
And so when I have my feet up, it seems to make a difference with an issue like that. And what I do is I sit down and I do it for 20 minutes, and then I keep moving again.
There you go.
But it's just a short, time bracket where I'm able to have my feet up to be 6 to 10 inches above the heart, I think is what they
Correct.
recommend.
Getting your arm up over the heart or your leg up over the heart or whatever it is. That way the blood's not pumping up there, but it's a short-term temporary thing. Here's what I want to say about r.i.c.e.r, okay? It's a first aid treatment, not a cure for most of the injuries you're facing out there, okay? It's a first aid treatment. It's a temporary fix on something. But you can be sure the hospital's not putting the ice on it. They're putting the warmth on it now. You can be sure they're telling you to get up and get moving. They're not sitting there telling you to rest. And you can be sure they're wrapping bandages around it. They're still bringing you the compression.
That's a really great way to recap that. And I'm curious, have you created your own acronym for what we just went through? Is there a new one?
I'm sure there is a new one. It would be, let's see, move.
Yep. So M.
M. H for heat. That doesn't make a word. Compression and elevation would still go there. We might have to rearrange some of the letters here and come up with, let's see, compression, elevation, movement is SEM. CHEM.
We'll come up with
there you
something
go.
better.
It's CHEM. It's compression, heat, elevate, and then move. CHEM. It is moving forward according to the 15-point plan. All right, Dr. Gabe, we appreciate you bringing us r.i.c.e.r and helping us realize that CHEM is now the thing to remember in these situations. Folks, come join us in our Facebook group and give us a better acronym for that. We're at facebook.com/group/win-make-give. And we hope this episode ups your energy and takes you to the next level.